And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural Let's Rage Coogs post-game show. I'm joined by Da'Yon Dunlap. Da'Yon, I'll let you introduce yourself for a little bit, but we're excited. Houston, after falling behind, having a rough first half, were able to claw back and advance into the semifinals of the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament. Da'Yon, take it away. Introduce yourself, and let's see how this goes.
Man, just make it quick. I'm Dayon Dunlap. I mean, like Andy, I've been around covering UA sports for a while. Man, I'm ready to just talk some hoops. Coops. Second half kind of look like themselves.
For sure, and let's start right there with the first half. It was an interesting first half. It was a tale of two halves where you hear that cliche a lot, but Cincinnati came out from the get-go. It looked like they were more energetic. They were getting a lot of the 50-50 balls. I mean, really off the gate, Jeremiah Davenport started off with two early threes that put Cincinnati up early with 6 points. I
Yep.
think they were able to build up like a 13-4 lead, 15-6 lead, and really Houston was struggling. There was foul trouble. There was at one point where four of Houston's five starters picked up a foul, and then Josh Carlton picked up his second with like less than 5 minutes into the game, and that really kind of hindered Houston from being able to get into a rhythm. But give kudos to really the two key players of the game for the entire contest. It was Jamal Shed and Fabian White. Jamal Shed, especially more
Yeah.
in the first half, he was kind of, I tweeted out a couple of times, he was like the calming factor for the University of Houston team, especially when they couldn't get anything going. Kudos to the defense, where even when they couldn't get stuff going on offense, they held to Cincinnati. They never let Cincinnati run off and hide and build a
Yeah. Pull
insurmountable
away.
lead. They were always within striking distance. But Dayon, I'll let you go. What were your main takeaways from the first half?
I mean, first half, the one that stuck out to me, one team looked like they played yesterday. They were kind of in a better rhythm to start the game, in which Coach Sampson talked about that in the post game. Then for Houston, it was a lot of turnovers. It was a lot of turnovers. And I mean, last time we saw them against Memphis, they turned the ball over a lot. And it was just sloppy play. They wasn't really playing in rhythm. And then fouls. I mean, you got to adjust to the way the game is being called. And Coach Sampson said it was a lot of foul calls. I think Cincinnati took 15 first half free throws, and they made up
Yeah.
11, 13. And so that's just too many fouls. They have to adjust to the way the game is being called. And then other than that, it was just a lack of rhythm. But like you said, their defense kept them in it, and which didn't allow Cincinnati to really kind of extend their lead or build a big lead to where Houston was have to really fight back to really try to get back into the game. They were always in the game, pretty much with their defense.
Yeah, and then kind of talk a little bit more about the second half kind of switch. I mentioned it. It seemed like Houston was able to control the tempo a lot more in the second half. They really started to slow things down, and actually give kudos to the team because Cincinnati struck first. They were able to build a 10-point lead. It was 37-27, and then from that point forward, it kind of seemed like Houston flipped the switch. Where I mean, they ended the game on an absurd 42-19 run, and that's really where I felt like Fabian White Jr. kind of started to take over the game. It honestly, this game reminded me a lot more of that Rutgers game last season in the
Yeah.
second round of the NCAA tournament. Obviously, not as much drama at the end of this game as that game had, but it seemed like Houston was kind of going through emotions the first half. They were struggling to get a lot of momentum going, and then I remember in that game against Rutgers, Fabian White hit a big three from the top of the key, and that kind of started getting things going in this game. Fabian White, he was their best 3-point shooter. He hit the first 3-point of the game for Houston, and really in the second half, he was a lot more of a force in the paint. They were kind of slowing the tempo down, feeding it to him down low, and that allowed the team to kind of get that offensive rhythm. And on
Yeah.
defensively, they completely continued to shut down Cincinnati.
They did, and I think Fabian pretty really was the difference in that second half. I think I tweeted this earlier in the season when we still had Marcus and Tremont that even when Fabian's just aggressive to score, the team is really hard to beat. And Coach Sampson, which we'll have a clip shortly, talked about the game plan in that second half was to feature Fabian. He had a guard on him, Davenport, the entire game, and so it looked like a mindset from Fabian with along with the coaching staff and the philosophy. Hey, we're going to play through you, and he was just aggressive. He made shots. He 3-pointers in the paint. He was just too big and too good. And yeah, like Coach Sampson said, and we talk about missing Marcus and having a guy that we can play through or just give him the ball in his hands, let him get busy. And Coach Sampson said you need players that you can play through. And Fabian was that person who used to play through in that second half, and he delivered.
Real quickly, we're going to bring in Sean Baldwin, who's joining us from the stream. Sean, welcome to the show. Can you hear us?
What's good, y'all? Nah, I can hear you. That's crazy.
Ash,
I didn't know y'all bring people in. I was just trying to
we
see what y'all were talking about.
no, we
But
can. We'd like to hear your thoughts. What were your main takeaways from the first game for Houston in the American Athletic Conference tournament?
see, you putting me on the spot. I'm not even gonna lie, but I came in on the end of it, and I don't know. I don't know, man. Don't give me the lie. Don't give me the lie. But it's just me overall with just college basketball right now. I'm just trying to get prepared for March Madness. So that's another reason I'm sitting here listening. But like you see, I do got my hat on. I just came back from HEB, but look, I'm here, supporting you guys really. So that's why I just listening. That's
I
all.
appreciate it for
Yeah, for
sure.
For
And
sure.
man,
real.
I've been watching games all day, and it's been
Right.
upsets after upset. Texas A&M
Yep.
upset Auburn. It's been
Auburn.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm getting into that mode. I'll definitely be watching the game tomorrow though, and and I will say, matter of fact, since I'm on here, I will say Fabian White has grown a lot on me. Yes, I will say that. And like you said, to the point of him expanding his game and starting to make threes is that was something that was impressive to me. So yeah, to y'all's point, yeah, Fabian White has been a big difference maker. I have noticed that.
We're gonna bring in another guest to the show, Mo. Great. I don't know. You can hear us. You got to adjust a little bit because this banner's kind
Yeah,
of cutting
yeah.
us
How
off.
y'all
But
doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I wanted to say first and foremost, go Cougs. But yeah, first half was a little bit,
Uh-oh, I think we just
He kind
lost
of
him.
he kind of cut out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we'll try to bring him back if he gets back in. But actually, I think he might just be back.
can y'all hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We lost him for
Okay,
a
okay,
second.
my bad. I don't know what part I left off, but I was saying the first half was a little bit shaky. We kind of started off rough. We let them get to a hot start, and then that was kind of one of my fears that you know with UH when we don't start off hot, we can typically it takes a long time for us to get back going. But with Fabian as a leader, he showed his why he stayed along for so long and why he's the most winningest player. Just showing his leadership by taking over. Usually this would be a game where we'd have Marcus coming in and being that
Hmm.
microwave player, but of course, with the culture of this team, that next man up mentality. I think we have a chance to at least take it to the Sweet 16, but it's definitely going to take everybody has to buy in, and what Kevin Sampson is able to do with this team, it's amazing. So regardless of kind of a rough start, I think this is kind of a good wake up game, and I
Yeah,
think we'll take the next game more serious and probably start with the our foot on the gas rather than trying to react and catch up. But we'll see.
yeah. You said a key word, culture, and next man up, and just look at Houston. Any given game, anybody can beat you. Whether it's Josh Carlton going off for 20, um, Kyler going off for 20, Fabian the tear he's been on, Jamal Shea continuing to develop, even Ty J having big games. So the culture is the main thing, and it's really pulling us Houston over the top game by game.
Oh, one
Yeah.
more thing. I have a friend that actually he went to Tech, and whenever Kyler came here, he was like, "Good luck." Like he was already trying to tell me like, "Oh, he's gonna crumble when it comes down." So that's one thing I'm actually nervous about, but hopefully he proves him wrong. Like come March time, we really need Kyler to, if he wants to show that he's an NBA caliber type of guy, he's gonna have to show us something. He's gonna have
Yeah,
to step up to the plate. Maybe he'll step up kind of like how Quentin Grimes did last March. He really showed that hey, this is what I got, showcase his talents, and able to be at least a 3-and-D kind of guy for us, or at least
yeah,
hit open shots. So we'll see how that goes, but
yep.
Yeah, Mo, you might be able to join us as a common guest because right there you just set it up perfect for us because we were actually going to jump right into it. Kyler Edwards, something that Calvin Sampson mentioned in his post-game availability, he talked about how really Kyler Edwards, he is the best defender for the team. He said he did real good on defense in today's game, but you look at his stats, he really his shooting woes continue. Another game he was not able to hit a three, he was 0 for 6. Struggled shooting the ball. He had 3 turnovers. But overall, it seems like Houston relies on him more of that defensive impact. But I agree with what both of you said, especially if Houston wants to get to certainly the Sweet 16, and I mean even beyond once they get into the NCAA tournament, he's going to be a key factor. They're going to have to be able to rely on him, especially from 3-point range, especially now that they don't have Marcus Sasser, they don't have Tremont Mark. They really need a lot of help in perimeter shooting, and Fabian White stepped up in that role in this game, but it feels like they need that little extra oomph to be able to get over the hump and go make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. What say you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm not even going to look that far ahead. I'm just going to stay in the conference tournament. He's just going to need it. He affects the game even when his shot isn't falling. So I give him credit for that, especially being a lockdown defender. And you think with the rest that he had coming in, that maybe he would be able to get some shots to fall. And so, but like what I love about him even more is even when his shot isn't falling, some players kind of doesn't lose energy and doesn't play as hard on the defensive end, but he doesn't do that. He still competes really hard on the defensive end when the ball is in his hands. Often he makes the right play and makes plays for his teammates. But against the winner, I guess Houston gets the winner of 10-point Tulane.
10-point Tulane, correct.
Yep. And so even looking in that next game in which both of those teams are guard oriented, have really good guards. And we know we got Fabian and the other assets that we have. But eventually, if you get past whoever wins that game and then the winner of SMU in Memphis, but those next two games, I think Kyler at some point has to make at least open shots, like Muhammad just said, at least open shots. Although he is bringing it on the defensive end, I got to give him his credit for that.
Yeah, for sure, and it kind of transitioning more into Jamal Shedd's role, and you know something you asked them about after the post game in the Zoom. You said, kind of what's been the difference for him from last season. He was on the team, didn't necessarily get consistent minutes as a rotational player, but he talked about how last season really his most important role was to bring energy, whether that was in practices, whether that was on the bench. Now this year, obviously he's the starting point guard. He's a lot more of a hands-on approach. His role is much more, visual on the court for everyone to be able to see. But he still talked about how one of the key things he's focusing on is to be able to continue to bring that energy while he's on the court. And I think that's something he was able to do. Now, something Kelvin Sampson said, and this is a direct quote, he said, there's still a lot of meat left on the bone when it comes to Jamal Shedd. A lot of skill. He raved about his skill, his overall skill, and how he still has a lot of room to improve. And one of the favorite sayings that Kelvin Sampson has is that Jamal Shedd is only a freshman, especially when you look at his eligibility with the COVID year. That is true, and he got a little bit of that experience with the Final Four run, and now he's being able to take all that experience he saw firsthand and now being able to apply it directly. What do you think you can see from Jamal Shedd going forward?
Yeah, and another thing that from Coach Sampson that he said about Jamal Shannon, which I just love Coach Sampson, he's a straight shooter. He just keeps it 100 at all times. And he said he's already good, but the challenge is not accepting being good and having that will to be great. And Jamal can be great. He said it, but that's where kind of the adversity can come, and just accepting being coached hard and being pushed hard to be great. And he said getting off to a good start. And then after I asked Jamal that question, that told me immediately he accepted the challenge, because he was like, I have to help get off to a good start. He didn't put it all on himself, but he was like, I have to help the team getting off to a good start, and wish the ball in his hands a lot of times. I mean, like the quarterback. And so he played a better half in that second half, where he made consecutive plays just back to back. Just kind of turned the tide, and like him and Fabian kind of picked up off each other. And you heard Fabian say, when we lead by example, the others at some point it's going to follow suit. And so, I mean, a good leader. He had a good start. I just love his shot selection. A lot of times he doesn't take bad shots or shots that he can't make. And so it's just being a better, consistent outside shooter is the next step of his game. But as far as playmaking, driving, he had probably a Sports in the Top 10 pass, in which I wish J1 would have dunked it to make it even better. But plays like that, it just shows his basketball IQ, knowing where he is, and his athletic ability, really.
Yeah, for sure. Jamal Sheff finished, when you look at the score sheet, he only had 7 assists. Honestly, he could have easily had 10 plus. There was a lot of times where he set up bigs, especially Jaywan Roberts a lot, where he put him in a perfect position and ended up in Cincinnati having to foul the bigs and leading to free throws. So a lot of those, they don't show up in the stat sheet, but I feel like Jamal Sheff played about as well certainly that he has all season long, is he's been able to be at that level more often than not now. The key is going to be consistency to keep it throughout on not only in the tournament, like you mentioned, whoever is the winner between Temple and Tulane and going forward, but also he's going to be a big key, especially we saw today, Josh Carlton gets in early foul trouble. How much of a role do you think that played in the early offensive struggles for Houston with not having him for 15 minutes in the first half?
I think it played a huge key for just having his presence on the floor. He demands attention when he's on the floor, whether just trying to deny him the basketball or just trying to block him out, keep him from getting an offensive rebound, which open up lanes for Jamal to drive and things like that. So I think it was a huge key. But like Coach Sampson said, if you watch the game, it's often like the analogy Coach Sampson used, like throwing darts at a dartboard. You're trying to focus it and throw it so much in on Josh, and he's battling so hard just to get position to where Fabian, he can operate more. You throw it at him at the mid post, he can face you up, he can drive by you, you can throw it to him on the block, he can back you down and finish it. So I mean, I think it was a huge key, but Josh still, his presence alone a lot of times still affects the game, even when he isn't scoring at a high rate. But he doesn't take bad shots. He doesn't take any, like Coach Sampson said, he still went 4 for 4, still dominant. But I think Jamal Shead, in my opinion, has to be more aggressive. He does a great job of picking his spots, in which I'm not telling him to shoot more shots, but continue to pick his spots. But I think for this team to continue to advance, they're going to need more offense from him, whether it's getting inside, shooting those floaters, or still creating for others.
Yeah, for sure. And along the note, yeah, I think in terms of the foul trouble, that out of all the positions that they could have a little bit of leeway, it was the big position because obviously, of course, like you mentioned, Josh Carlton plays a big role, and he certainly is a kind of like a go-to anchor offensively. But when it comes to the guard position, where they're already very thin, they were able. Jamal Shead was kind of flirting in problem with being able to in foul trouble. I know they called the flagrant on him early in the first half. Side note, real quick, what do you think? Yeah, what do you think about the flagrant?
That was a bad call. He was really just trying to stop, for sure. Like, it wasn't flagrant is something excessive in my mind, in which you're trying to do a non-basketball play. He tried to make a hard foul to not allow an easy 2 points because he was guarding someone bigger. So that was a crazy call.
Yeah, for sure. And along those notes, he was able to avoid foul trouble. He only finished with 3 personal fouls. He was able to stay on the floor. And I think that shows a lot of credit because that happened about midway in the first half. And Shed had 2 fouls and Kelvin Sampson kept him in the game. And that shows kind of the trust that he has in him. And honestly, it was kind of out of necessity because he was, like I said, he was kind of doing a good job of slowing things down and the success that they were having on offense in the first half. Jamal Shed was behind a lot of it. One of the other players we haven't really talked about, Tajay Moore, had a decent game, not necessarily anything that would warrant criticizing, but do you feel like what does he have to do going forward, not only in the American Athletic Conference tournament, but obviously, of course, beyond for him in terms of like you mentioned, the way this Houston team is structured, it's kind of like a who's hot offense. Today it was Fabian White. He kind of took the reins there, especially in the second half. But Tajay Moore is still right there. He still has the ability to do that on any given night as well.
I think he's the X factor. I think he probably is one of the most important outside of Jamal and needs to be on the floor a lot of times from what I've seen from him, because I think he needs to continue to make open shots. But not only what he brings on the defensive end, those hustle plays, those deflections. He gets a lot of deflections that lead to offensive rebounds and steals and things like that. But Tajay, I mean, he as long as he plays within himself and make open shots. Once he makes those open shots, he can create for himself. Coach Sampson talked about how they feature him in the mid-post area, let him isolate a little bit. But I think they need him on the floor because he can also handle the ball. And I mean, if Kyler doesn't continue to shoot the ball as well as I'm sure he would like, I think Tajay is only going to be even more important for him to be on the floor and just create offense, whether it's offensive rebound or putbacks, getting out in transition, just doing different ways. You don't have to always call plays for him to score, and that's what's so great about him in his game.
Yeah, we have a comment there from one of our viewers, Gian Cardenas. He said he tuned in when the Cougs were trailing Cincinnati in the first half, but he noticed how much the team began to improve when Carlton came back on the floor in the second
Yeah,
half. And that's an interesting point there, where Fabian White was able to kind of establish more of his dominance in that second half. But I'd imagine a lot of it had to do because Cincinnati had to focus on Josh Carlton because
yep.
of how much of an offensive threat he is.
Yep, and that's kind of what we just said. Like the attention that he brings while he's on the floor. I mean, you have to focus on him. He's such a big body, and Fabian's a willing passer. Everyone on the team is a willing passer. So if you lead him, they will feed Josh. And so he demands attention. He's big. He has great skill set, and that's a great analogy because I saw the same thing when watching the game. It was a different when he was on the floor. What about the bench production? That's something we don't really talk
Yeah.
about. And something that I talked with Miles, who kind of joined the Twitter Spaces last week about. I mean, just look at Reggie Chaney. I know he's averaging like 3 points per game, and he gives good bench production. But him and J1, I think those two, if you can get at least 4 points, that's 8 points. Or
Yeah.
let's just say 6. That's 12 points between the two of them, whether it's offensive rebounds, getting foul gets, or however that they can manufacture it. I think those two has to have some type of bench production for Houston to not only advance in this American Conference tournament and just going forward. The bench has to be better. I mean, Ramon, he brings the energy. I think he made his 3 free throws. He needs to just take some when the game comes to him. But for J1 and Reggie, they've been there before. And so I think they have to have a bigger contribution when they come into the game offensively. I know most likely Houston doesn't play through them, but like we said, it's the culture. Offensive rebounds, just different ways that you can manufacture points and affect the game. I think they have to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And once again, Kelvin Sampson went with a 8-man rotation like they have for the entire season. And Jaywan Roberts was the player that played the most off the bench. He had 17, and like you mentioned, he had 14. He had 4 points on 2 for 3 shooting, and
Yep.
he had a lot of good opportunities where Jamal Shed was able to find him open, and he just had to go up. He was fouled a couple of times. Went over 3 from the free throw line, so that's another aspect that Houston has struggled. Ramon Walker, he got on the scoreboard. He also got to the free throw line. He hit all 3
Yep.
free throws in one. I believe it was Mike Saunders that fouled them on a 3 in the corner, I believe. And then Reggie Chain, like you mentioned, he was the other player. But I mean, combined, that's 3 players. They played a total of. Yeah, like I said, J1 Roberts was the high with
20-some minutes.
17, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Reggie
combined,
played, I think he played like 11.
yeah, he did, and combined they had 7 points total, and
Okay.
only. Well, here's the thing with J1 Roberts. I'm looking at that just going off the stat sheet. He has 5 rebounds, so that's how he impacts the game, and that's something he
Yeah.
was able to do a lot against Wichita State, if I'm not mistaken, in that
Yep.
double overtime game where even Kelvin Sampson mentioned it, where he had gone with Reggie Chaney oftentimes, and then he felt like it wasn't a good matchup for him in terms of the problems Wichita State was providing with their athleticism. Put Jaywan Roberts in there just to see if it'd be a better fit, and he was, and he made an immediate impact. And that's the one thing with Roberts, when he's on the floor, you notice him just because of his athleticism. He's always going to provide something, even if it's just on the boards. It's not necessarily on the scoreboard.
Yep, his activity. He's going to be active. He's going to be involved in the play no matter where the ball is, especially when the shot goes up. And so, like him, right? And you said it a minute ago. There was plays that I feel like he left on the court where he could have finished, or and just had even more points. And he got to make his free throws. I remember before the season started, coaches and everyone talked about how he added to his game. He was making his jump shot and even making his free throws. I think he just has to continue to evolve. And look back last year where Reggie, he was inserted into the starting lineup primarily because he could catch, he could post, and he could finish. He can knock down the short, like 15-foot jump shot as well. And so he has the athletic ability. Once he gets the time on the floor, I think he has to make the most of it. But he definitely affects the game, whether it's contesting shots, rebounding as well. But I think those two specifically, in my opinion, have to have a little bit more bench production for Houston.
Yeah, and on that note, we're gonna bring in Akib Ghazi, who is joining us from undisclosed location, let's say. No, but Akib, thank you for joining us. I mean, let's start overall from the game. What were your overall takeaways?
Nah, it was can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it was like the first half, even though we were down by I think what was it? The halftime score to close out.
It was 5. It was 32-27.
Yeah, even then, and then even when it got to in the second half, I think it's 39-32, I believe. Before we made that 12-0 run, I think even then I wasn't worried for the Cougars. Like I thought because of the culture, because of what how hard our guys fight and how hard they play. I didn't think like, I mean, obviously you could always win or lose games like that, but still, I knew they would put up a fight regardless. It was a little bit different from the Memphis game, the last Memphis game where we lost, where I thought, it would take a lot of extra, stuff to go our way, shots to fall, all that, for us to, have a chance at winning that game. But I think with this game, it felt different. I don't know if it was like that to you guys. It felt like anytime the Houston Cougars could just turn it up and then they could make a run. So, it was a good game. Second half, they put up a great fight, and then they went on a big run. And that's the one thing with this UH team is that they have the ability to just turn on a switch just like that. They might still be hustling for balls and all that, but then when the shots start falling, like it's kind of like a ball rolling down a hill. So I thought they played great in the second half.
Yeah, I think they did, and like you, I never really felt that like in that Memphis game, like it was getting out of hand. Even when we were down with about 7 or anything like that, I always felt that at any point Houston could turn it on. But from your perspective, what did you see offensively a difference in the second half that kind of helped Houston get going?
I think just shots falling, and then also there were still. I think a lot of the rebounds started going our way, offensive rebounds. Jamal Shed was finding guys still in the second half, and we were finishing around the rim. I don't see the way we played from the second half versus the first half. I didn't actually see much of a difference. It was just stuff like we saw. The hustle was still there in the first half, and then in the second half as well. But then also, I guess to Houston's credit, Cincinnati they stopped making shots. They're turning over the ball in the second half. Just stuff that Houston does on a regular basis that caused Cincinnati to start missing shots and getting sloppy with the ball. That's what I thought was the main difference. But in terms of like how they were playing, I thought the first half they're playing still in a similar style. Is just stuff started going the Cougs way.
Yeah, and one other note that we wanted to talk about, actually a couple. I'm curious to see what your thoughts were about what you saw from Kyler Edwards. We mentioned it, how his shooting woes continued again. He went 0 for 6 from 3, but Calvin Sampson talked about how really his biggest impact in this game was how good he was defensively and how he was able to. He called him the best defender that U of H has, and obviously with the amount of minutes that he's played, really top to bottom, him and Jamal Shed. And what they ask of him defensively, you'd imagine that takes a lot from his legs, which is crucial to a shooter. But we talked about how in order for Houston to be able to not only, whether it's Temple or Tulane in the next round in the conference tournament and beyond, he's going to be a crucial piece offensively for this team to be able to make a deep run. What say you?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it on the last show. Kyler Edwards like shooting struggles, but I think you guys mentioned it in this show as well that we can focus on Kyler Edwards, but at the same time, like the other guys will usually tend to step up to help us win games. But yeah, the Kyler Edwards struggle is kind of weird because he had a great stretch of like 5-6 games midway through the season where he was knocking down shots. He was lights out. He was looking like that type of player that Quentin Grimes was last season for UH. But then it's been maybe 11, 12 games stretch now where I think even in that span, he's maybe had one good shooting game. Like every other game, he's maybe going like 0 for 6, 0 for 7, 1 for 5, 1 for 6, whatever the case is. So that's a little bit concerning in the aspect of like looking at him directly and not looking at the team as a whole. With Coach Sampson preaches this, like we're not a team that is gonna make shots. Like we're just gonna have to get offensive rebounds. That's how we play. And he's preached that, throughout his, tenure as a Houston head coach. But yeah, the Kyler Edwards debacle, you could say, is like, it's kind of it's interesting because we know he can shoot. It's just, I'm sure it's the tired legs. He did have, he had 4 or 5 days rest for this game, so it is kind of weird to see that he wasn't able to hit his threes even after the rest. But I think either way, UH has so many ways to get it done, whether it be Josh Carlton, Fabe, Jamal Shed. They have, and then also Tajay Moore has been playing well. He didn't shoot the ball as well today, but he's been playing great. So we got so many contributors to this team to where Kyler Edwards missing his shots is not going to, impact us in a large way. I mean, it helps. We'd probably blow out teams easily early on if he is making shots. But hopefully come tournament time, or even in this tournament, in the AAC tournament, he can start hitting his shots again.
Yeah, and we saw this kind of early in the season, even like before Marcus went down. He was shooting how he was down like 20-something%. And then when Marcus went down, like you talked about, he had a hot stretch where he stepped up, was looking like he was probably going to be the player of the year. Then he kind of slowed down. And like we talked about in the last show, I think it is a lot of different factors. And like King Jaja just said, his defense is so good. But like Muhammad said, I mean, you expect him to at least make open shots. But another thing that he does well, I think that goes unnoticed, when Jamal gets a rest, or even he's on the floor and Coach Sampson rests him while he's on the floor, the ball is in Kyler's hands, and he is in a lot of pick and rolls, and often he makes a lot of good plays. He feeds Josh, feeds Fabian on those pick and roll, pick and pops, and so he affects the game in so many ways, even when his shots isn't falling. But like the last thing you said, if he makes shots, we probably could blow out teams. Like, no lie, for real. And so I think for him, just stay in the gym, stay locked and loaded, keep shooting those shots because he's a capable shot maker. Who do you think, both of you guys, is more important to make shots? Is it Kyler or Tajay?
Ooh. Dang, that's a good question. I would probably have to say, in terms of big. Now that's a question. I would say in terms of momentum plays, I'd probably have to go Tajay because more often than not, he's going to have some spectacular athletic play that kind of sparks the team in terms of making a higher play that gets the momentum up. I think in terms of
that big three.
First game.
Yeah.
He's hit multiple
against
big
Hofstra.
shots.
Yeah, he's shown that he can come up in the big moments. I think if you look at it more from an overall perspective, if Kyler Edwards can get his shot going, I think it does Houston wonders because it'll space out the floor a lot more. And I mean, even then, they still respect Kyler Edwards. You saw how Cincinnati guarded him, and it was one play. I believe it was in the second half where Jamal Shed was able to crack into the lane, and then Cincinnati wasn't able to help because one of the defenders stayed with Kyler Edwards because they respected his 3-point shot, and it allowed Jamal Shed to have the layup. And I believe that's what ended up tying the game, if I'm not mistaken. It came early. But that's a good question. I think at the end of the day, the thing that makes this team unique after they lost Marcus Sasser and Tremont Mark is that there's not really one player you can key on because, like we said today, it's Fabian White and Jamal Shed, and whoever they play, whether it's Temple or Tulane. It could be Josh Carlton that has a big night. It could be Tajay Moore that has a big night. It could be Ramon Walker hitting threes off the corner. He's shown that he's been able to do it. That's what makes them dangerous. But at the same time, it's their strength and their weakness because there's not necessarily a go-to guy each night now that Sasser's gone. And on that note, we will join on our fourth co-host, Chris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. Chris, thank you for joining us on the inaugural Let's Rage Coogs on YouTube, on the official Houston Roundball Review YouTube, on our official Twitter accounts at PodSlamajama, and on my Twitter account at Yanez_5. Chris, thank you for joining us. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. This is great, guys. I'm glad to see it happen. It's come to fruition. Akib, how you doing? Da'Yon, brother, how you doing?
All right.
It's good, and I'm sure you guys have pretty much covered a lot of the stuff. It took a while for them to get started. The foul trouble was an issue, but as Coach Sampson said in the post game, those were fouls. Josh Carlton's push off, that was a foul. And I'm not a fan. I'm media. I'm not going to blame the refs.
Yep.
It's up to the players to adjust to how the game is called. And if you don't, then you sit on the bench. That's just simple. That's the bottom line. You have to adjust to how the game is officiated. Did a better job of that in the second half? Defense was better. They played better. Simple.
Question we just had for the panel. I'd love to hear your perspective. We know how it's not one person, the way the season transpired, that you focus on for Houston, but who do you think's important? I don't want to say more important, but because they're both very important, but between Tajay and Kyler, who does Houston want? I don't want to say want either, but kind of need to make more shots.
Of the two of them?
Yeah, between the two of them.
Honestly, I'd like to see Tajay take more shots. I think his game, mid-range and in, because he's got a nice post-up game too. I'd like to see him do more of that. Kyler, he's back to struggling to make threes, so he doesn't have the game to beat his man off the dribble like Tajay Moore can. So for me, I'd pick Tajay.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I agree with that 100% because Kyler, like we said, he affects the game in so many other ways, and I think Tajay, like you said, he has a more complete offensive where he can beat you off the dribble. He can post you up. He can shoot over you. He can knock down big shots, like Andy said. And so I think I would like to see Tajay take a little bit more shots. I agree.
And Chris, on that note, it's a point we've made a couple of times on the show, but it seemed like obviously the first half Houston struggled to score offensively. In the second half, they get Josh Carlton back after he missed 15 minutes due to foul trouble. Do you feel like he played a big factor, just his presence alone, that Cincinnati to account for into Fabian White's difference and big second half that he had offensively?
Yeah, I mean, Josh Carlton's important. His low post presence is a matchup advantage for almost every team Houston has in the conference, except Memphis, But Josh, he's got to do a better job on those high screens. He gets caught in drop coverage too much and allows the ball handler to get an easier look behind the three. So that's a problem. And he can't take himself out of games with early fouls because with him on the bench, that's a low post option that's gone. So he has to be better than that. So, it's learning experience for him. I think they'll be better tomorrow. Either team, if they play tomorrow, it has the size advantage for Houston. So he should be better tomorrow.
I think that's the reason why you see a lot of Reggie Chaney and J'Wan Roberts is because Josh Carlton, he has that problem when he either gets in foul trouble or when he tries to defend in drop coverage, he has that issue just being, I guess, like a bigger guy, 7-footer. Understandably, it can get difficult sometimes, but hey, I mean, it's like next man up. So anytime Sampson's going to go to his bench and grab somebody if he feels like you're not playing to the team's best ability. So, I mean, I definitely agree with you, Chris, on that.
I could be right. I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off, man, but yeah. I could be right. Josh, he's not the quickest footed guy. Okay.
Yeah. Laterally,
laterally, that's not him. He's a big dude, tall dude, heavy feet. I'm kind of surprised more teams don't involve him more in high screens.
Yeah.
Because it's an issue. But if it became more of an issue, then coach would just go to J'Wan or Reggie Chaney to, handle it better. But, learning experience for him. Jamal Shead. Andy, can we answer this question ourselves about Jamal Shead's flagrant foul?
Yeah, jump on it. That's for the fans. For us, we already kind of took a swing at it.
By rule, it's a flagrant foul. Because he had his arms come over the shoulders and it's anything above the neck, the ref's going to look at. So by rule, it was a flagrant one. I just thought he should have gave up the layup because the team was in foul trouble so much.
Yeah.
He's the one guy as the point guard. He can't get in foul trouble. Especially early. So I was just like, man, let's give it the layup, but he didn't, and it didn't hurt him too much, but it could have because Jamal has a tendency sometimes to get a reach-in foul or go for a pump fake and get the extra foul, and the team cannot afford him to be in foul trouble.
And on that note, we mentioned it before, but how big do you think it was that I believe that was the second foul he picked up? I think it was towards the middle of the first half, and Kelvin kept them in. And how much does this show the confidence that he has in Shed to be able to play him through two fouls, and especially in a position where they were already lacking depth? I guess they were really screwed if he picked up the start foul,
It's
but I think it shows
confidence.
commitment.
I think it's confidence in Jamal, but it's also reality. Where else was he going to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of talked this before you joined, and I think Jamal should be a little bit more aggressive, looking for his shot, not to force shots, but when he's driving in, because I think as the season goes on, looking at just maybe these next two games, if Kyler isn't hitting his shots, and for example, Fabian or Josh is in charge, however the game may go. And like you said, Jamal has to be on the floor. I think he should just be a little bit more aggressive. He does a great job of his decision making. So I'm not saying that he doesn't play smartly, but I just think he has to at some point to just have to be more aggressive, just looking to score.
I agree, and he is probably third best behind Fabian and Tajay to get his own shot. He can beat his man off the dribble. How many other players in the conference can he not beat off the dribble? Yeah. So he needs to get his shot a little more. Break down. He's got to be smart and not pick up an offensive foul once he gets in the paint. But I think he's learned from that and got better with that. So he has untapped potential. I think we've just scratched the surface with him, and I think Coach Sampson touched on a little bit in the post game how Jamal could be great. Jamal could be the next Kendrick Davis in this conference.
Yep.
I think he's got that potential to be a scorer and facilitator. I think he can be that great in this conference. Well, only got one more year left in the American, hopefully, but still, he's got that potential.
If he works on that, sorry, go ahead, Da'Yon.
No, I was just going to say, you look at Kendrick Davis and Jalen Green now, that's what separates them two from Jamal Shead is their ability to score consistently.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me with Jamal, it's that 3-point shot. It looks good. The stroke is fine. Like anyone that watches hoops and plays hoops, like you understand it's nothing that his shot, it's not. Maybe it's like the reps he needs, and then maybe more of the confidence to where he's not gonna have to take a three when he's like completely wide open. Even sometimes he gives up those types of shots as well. But over the course of the season, I did notice he was taking more, threes when they're giving it to him. But I mean, I feel like the shot eventually is going to start falling. If he works on that over the offseason, he'll be extremely dangerous because like he has that little floater going on. He has a little mid-range jump shot. He could get he finishes great around the rim for someone that he's only a sophomore. That's like a lot of times like I forget myself.
Oh, Coach Sampson was second. Coach Sampson says he's a freshman.
Yeah, he's a freshman. He'll say he's a freshman over and over.
Technically. Yeah. Well, that's freshman. Yeah. But anyways, like this is his second year, on the team. But yeah, like I forget many times myself that he's an underclassman. He has several years of eligibility to play, and like one more amazing season, who knows? Like he could probably go to the league after next year. Like it's similar to a Marcus Sasser type, where after last season we saw the potential, and then we saw it this season where he played a good amount of games, and he already looks like Sasser looks like someone that could go to the league after this season is over, and if he doesn't return to Houston.
For sure.
That's an interesting conversation about Marcus Sasser, especially with the way this season has gone. Chris, a question for the panel in terms of, I think you saw this a little bit in that second half where Houston kind of, the way the game went, they started going a lot more to Fabian White. I feel like once they were able to get the run and tie it, it kind of disheartened Cincinnati after they jumped out early to the 10-point lead in the second half. And then really once it got tied, it seemed like Houston was much more in control of the pace. They were feeding it to Fabian White down low. He was finally able to get his hook shots after he had gotten his 3-point shot to go earlier in the game. That's really where I feel like the tide turned for Houston, and that's when it seemed like they had gotten control of the game. What say y'all?
Let me go first, fellas, on this one. I'm not Coach Sampson. I haven't been a head coach for 33 years, but I would like to see them go to Fabian more. In the post, mid-range, because he has a face-up game, he has more variety to his game to handle whatever defense comes his way. So, like SB is saying, if the three isn't falling, get the ball to Fabian in different looks. Yep. That's me. But like I said, I'm not Coach Sampson, but that's my thought on that. Get the ball, get Fabian more touches, or get Tazi more touches.
Yeah, and I'm gonna piggyback off of that. Not only get him more touches, I think he needs to be more aggressive. Like it was watching the game, it was a difference. He touched it in the first half, but in the second half, he was aggressive to score. And so some of that, I agree. I'm not a coach either. Let me say that. But he needs to get more touches. But not only that, he needs to be more aggressive to score. Like whether he scores or not, being aggressive to score is going to open up the floor because he's so versatile. That mid range, he can face up, he can shoot, he can do pretty much everything on the floor. I think he is one that has to be more aggressive to score.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with both of you guys. It's just the beauty of Fabian's game is he can score in so many different ways. He can post you up. He could get a little mid range going. He could shoot that 3-ball, which is like falling, at a great rate for him this season for someone who's just only starting to shoot threes in his career. But like with Fabian, he can. I would say like exactly what Da'Yon was saying. I would like to see him aggressive and also Coach Sampson trying to run more plays or more sets for Fabian to get involved. Because, I mean, Kyler Edwards, it seemed like he's progressed into just this one-dimensional player, like to where he just either attacks the rim or he shoots threes. And time to time, Kyler does shoot that mid-range shot, but I don't know how effective that is, in my opinion. But Fabian, from all points of the floor, he can really get you a bucket, especially if you can get a switch on to a little guy. Like he's gonna be able to get that hook shot. And I think he's even though his numbers maybe might not show it. I think he's an underrated passer. Like he doesn't really turn over the ball as much, and he can whenever there are multiple bigs in the passing lane, he could get it to another guy like Josh Carlton or Jaywan Roberts or Reggie Chaney. So I'd like to see him definitely get more looks for sure.
I agree with both of y'all. Fabian probably does need to be more aggressive. He's so complimentary of his teammates. He said it again in post game, how his teammates did a great job getting the ball. But, when you're the best player on the team, the best player in the game, damn it.
Act like it.
Demand the ball. Yeah. Tell the guards, get me the ball.
Yeah.
Let me go to work. I'll facilitate, whatever. But sometimes, and I would think Coach Sampson has said he trusts Fabian more than anybody. I think he can deal with that. Fabian just says, Fabian, you want to take over? Take over. You got it. I trust you to make the right decision. So maybe he does. He probably does need to be more aggressive.
What about bench production? I think we talked about it before you joined too, Chris. What about some bench production? I mean, just 4 points from Reggie and Jaywan. We know they're going to be active rebounding. It's 4 points from either one of them asking too much. I know they're not going to be featured, so we're not saying throw it to them. But we know Reggie's capable. He was inserted into the start lineup last season because he was more versatile on the offensive end. From what I've saw, I know Coach Sampson probably has an overall view of why he was inserted more, but just looking at the skill set. And then from Jaywan, I mean, I think he leaves a lot of shots out there from offensive rebounds instead of just going right back up or catching and going up. Do you think they can give a little bit more bench production?
I know it's not his shooting hand, but his left hand, Reggie left hand, I think it's impacting him more for scoring. He doesn't seem to have confidence enough in himself to score, even put back layups. He had a chance, I think, in the first half with a little jump hook or, something in the paint. He passed it back out. Like he didn't want anything to do with it. And Jaywan, the same thing. Jaywan, earlier this season, missed too many layups. He's gotten better at that lately. So I'm not sure where that confidence is, both of them. Because at a minimum, score in the paint, putbacks, jump hooks, some production there from them, because it's going to be needed the more they play and the further they go in tournaments.
And on that note, offensively, there was one clip I wanted to play for Calvin Sampson's post-game availability. And this was via the American Athletic Conference YouTube account, so it'll look a little odd for a second, but it is relevant to what we just talked about in terms of offensively. He goes into Josh Carlton and play the clip now.
Shot 54% for the game. Josh never takes a bad shot. He's 4 for 4. But I don't want our guys to lose their aggressiveness by trying so hard to get the ball to Josh. Sometimes you need to let things happen organically. I think Josh is a lot better when he's playing through flow versus, targeting him or calling a play for him. Because referees let defenders play way more aggressive on the post than they do on the perimeter. But all three of our guards can play out of pick and rolls, and everybody guards you differently. Everybody has different kind of athletes or different strengths and weaknesses. We try to go, if Fabian got a certain matchup, we try to go with Fabian. Tajay had a certain matchup, we tried to go to Tajay. But those are our two best one-on-one players because they can go get a shot. Now, when Jamal gets downhill, he becomes really good because he's got a floater and he's a good free throw shooter. The first half, we didn't make free throws very well. But we had the wrong guy shooting the free throws. Tajay was 4 for 4. Jamal was 3 for 4. Fabian's 2 for 2. If those guys shot all the free throws, you'd say, hey, you guys are a good free throw shooting team. But if your worst free throw shooter is shooting all the free throws, hey, what's wrong with you guys free throw shooting? Well, nothing. It's this guy right here. We'll call him out. This guy's a bad free throw shooter.
We'll leave it on that note, but a couple of things. First, he got on the free throw shooting tangent towards the end, but in terms of what he talked about offensively, where it's more of a, like we mentioned, it's kind of like a who's hot offense. He didn't call it, I think the phrase he said, it's not more of a democracy in terms of who gets to score on offense, but at the same time, they're not gonna, the way they played this season, they're not necessarily gonna try to force feed the ball to someone, which I know you guys mentioned that, Chris, you said that you wish they'd go to Fabian White more often. What, off those comments, what are kind of your takeaways in terms of they kind of feed the hot hand more often than not instead of having a go-to scorer to try to establish them?
Well, I don't want them to force feed Josh Carlton because Josh can but his main job is in the post, whereas Fabian could face up a little further out and do more things with the ball. So that's my distinction between the two of them. But I definitely want to see them get Tajay more touches in the mid-range, free throw in. So I think he has an advantage on most of his defenders.
It seems like whenever Tajay, he posts up usually guards that are smaller than him, it seems like he makes that mid-range, that fadeaway jump shot at a high rate to me. Like, I don't know. I feel like he never misses that shot. Obviously, he does a couple, but I would like to see guys get going in that sense where if Coach Sampson, I think that's just maybe his philosophy, but if he could just recognize like a little bit more that we need to just get the guys that are hot, start going to them. I felt like last season we actually did that with, for example, Quentin Grimes. Like everyone just kind of ISO out, let Grimes do his thing. I felt like we did that a lot because he was that guy, averaging 18 a game. Definitely Fabian has that potential. If he was able to get more touches, he definitely could be scoring somewhere from 18 to 20 points a game. I could say it's just that's not the type of offense that Sampson runs, really.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Coach Sampson as far as players not losing their aggressiveness to try to throw it in to Josh. Because when you watch the game, everyone just stands around the perimeter where Josh is trying to establish position. He's battling, trying to get where just looking to just throw it into him instead of trying to score or just make a play. And so mean, I agree with both of what you guys are saying, and I think that's kind of what makes Coach Sampson so great. He empowers his players so much. Like no matter who's going, you're going to be the focal point. But I think it's a consensus between us that Fabian's the best player on the team now, and I mean, I think he should be the focal point in each game to get the ball to him. But with that, it's easier said than done because the scouting teams watch Houston just like we do, and they know like, okay, we probably got to stop Fabian. He's probably the top on the scouting report, and so it's kind of, I mean, it's a gift and a curse, I guess I would say. But I mean, I guess it's a good problem to have when you have a player as good as he is, and you have the ability to feed him more.
And I'll comment. I'm going to reply to SB's comment about the pick and roll. I'm kind of surprised at how college teams don't seem to do a good job defending pick and roll.
Yeah,
it's definitely different in the NBA than college because a whole bunch of times you see Ja set a pick, he ends up with a dunk. I mean, it's like a basic thing. Like there's no rotation on it whatsoever. If Ja sets a good pick, he just strolls down the paint, and it's just up to Jamal to find him and give him a good pass, and it's a basket. Whereas, NBA, they're going heads, double team, trap it, something. But a lot of college teams just like, no, stop. We don't really emphasize that defense. So I think more teams to do it. Run more pick and roll.
Yeah, for sure. And it's crazy to go off your point, Chris, because in college, there's no defense in 3 seconds. So you can literally stand in the paint. And so, yeah, that's a great point. He is so good in the pick and roll, especially with him and Jamal and with Kyler. He's really good. That's another thing I give Kyler. I mean, I got to give him his credit. Although his shot isn't falling, when Jamal is off the ball or he's resting and Kyler has the ball and he's in those pick and rolls, he often makes the right play and doesn't force a shot. He makes a beautiful pass. So he's able to affect the game in many different ways when his shot isn't falling. But the pick and roll defense, I definitely is something I've seen too. That's a great point.
And kind of to leave it on that note, put the final bow and tie on this show, and we look forward. They're going to end up playing the winner of Temple or Tulane at 2:00 tomorrow in the American Athletic Conference semifinals. I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. It's going to be some type of rematch. Currently, right now, Tulane's leading Temple by 9. In the latter, actually, they're at halftime, so they just got into halftime at that game. But Temple, that was the first team that Houston played without Marcus Sasser in Philadelphia. It was a bit of a game where they had to figure out how to play. They ended up only winning by 5. The second meeting came literally the last week of the regular season. It was a completely different story where Houston honestly completely ran them out the gym from the get-go. They built a 15-0 lead to get off the gate. So Temple made a little bit of a run, but Houston was in control most of that game. Against Tulane, that first outing in Fertitta Center, it was actually there was a lot of jawing between the players after the game in terms of Tulane's what they were able to accomplish here at Fertitta Center. They felt like they were right there with them, and they could have knocked them down. It came the second meeting, and Houston was able to flex their muscles in that outing in New Orleans, and Houston ended up winning all 3 meetings against those teams. Now, all 4 meetings, my mistake. But now coming into whoever they play again, it'll be the 3rd meeting. If it's Temple, it'll be the 2nd meeting in about a week span. What can you see for Houston? Well, first, from a Houston's perspective, what do they need to do to be able to be to avoid kind of another slow start that they had against Cincinnati? And 2, which kind of matchup favors them going into the semifinals?
Well, Tulane's Kevin Cross is a matchup problem for Josh Carlton because Kevin's 6'5", 6'6". He's an undersized 5. So that's going to be a problem defensively. But then it's just a big advantage for Houston offensively. So that's going to be an issue. Coogs just got to avoid foul trouble, play better, play smart on defense, and then just pick the poison on offense. And I think they'll be better tomorrow than they were first half today.
Yeah, I think Tulane gives us a little bit more problems, like because of guys like Kevin Cross, like you mentioned, Chris. And we saw this way back, even with I think the Wisconsin game. Wisconsin, they have I can't remember what the center's name is, but he's a guy that could stretch the floor if I recall correctly. And those are the type of players that, Houston has had problems with because of guys like Josh Carlton not being able to guard the perimeter that well. I mean, he's like a 7-footer. The way his understanding of defense is he's going to try to stick to the paint as close as possible and get those rebounds. But yeah, like to me, Tulane is a little bit. I mean, I feel like we could beat either of those teams, but more so we could beat Temple because they don't pose as much of a. Temple has great perimeter players, but they don't pose as much of a threat as Tulane does.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. I think Tulane would be the tougher matchup, especially when Jalen Cook plays. He isn't playing again today, but I'm not sure his injury status as far as if they win the tournament continues. But if he's on the floor along with Cross and Forbes, and they have a really good coach, and the way he's turning around, they actually believe that they're a good team. I also know Coach McKee, he's doing an outstanding job in Temple as well. But Tulane believe they're dangerous, and they believe. I think they'll be a tougher matchup. If Houston, like Chris said, and get off to a better start, I think they will play in a little bit more rhythm. And I think although they're a short bench, I think when a chance presents itself, they should get out in transition just a little bit more. Not become a transition team and run a lot more, but in those long rebounds or those opportunities when they get a semi-transition basket, I think they should create some easy opportunity that Coach Sampson doesn't have to coach.
Yeah. Chris, were you going to say something?
Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say, and I think something that's going to be crucial for Houston. Cincinnati did, I mean, heck, they did a good job, especially in the first half, of kind of winning those 50-50 balls. They actually ended up with more offensive rebounds than Houston, which you rarely see from a Kelvin Sampson team. And like you guys both mentioned, Chris, you talked about specifically in terms of if they do play Tulane, the matchup, the matchup issues that Kevin Cross provides. I think that's going to be interesting to see Houston if they can. Maybe it wasn't just an outlier against Cincinnati, or is that something that 8-man rotation is starting to catch up to Houston and they can't play like they like to do in terms of being physical? And the term they like to use a lot is kind of impose their will. I won't say the term, but they like to impose their will on other teams and kind of make them be the more physical team from the get-go. And that's something that, especially at the beginning of the first half of this game, Cincinnati did a good job of beating Houston to the punch. And I think Tulane provides a budget. They're much more top to bottom versed to be able to compete with Houston in that aspect. And I think that'll be a more issue for Houston if it does continue like they did in the first half against Cincinnati.
Agreed. I'm just glad we're doing this, guys. I'm looking forward to doing more of these in the future.
Yep, I agree. It's definitely cool.
Yeah, I mean, we got the tickers, we got the ESPN thing rolling. I figured out how to get a whole bunch of things. Look at this. We got the final score, 69-56 stats. We have a lot of listeners that tuned in. We were able to get 2 at the beginning of the show that talked about it. We had a lot of comments. So for those of you listening, I know I just shared it on the Coug fans forum. It seems like a lot of people were able to follow us in terms of that aspect. So we appreciate you guys that tuned us out, whether it's on Twitter, via the Potsdam at Jammo Twitter accounts, my personal Twitter accounts, the YouTube channel at the Houston Round Ball Review. We appreciate it, and we're trying to grow. At most now, we still have the semifinals game, and however number we have at most, the semifinals game, the championship game, and the entire NCAA tournament. So we'll see how many more of these we can do. But like you said, the avenue's there, and we're trying to do something that no one else does this. No one else is doing a UH post-game show in depth. I know the American Athletic Conference kind of ruined our initial plans in terms of Kelvin Sampson availability, but we'll work with it, and we appreciate all the support that we've seen. So before we log off, we'll go around the table, the virtual table. Da'Yon, you'll go first. Plug your stuff. Where can people find you online on Twitter?
I mean, just like it's shown, you can follow me at Da'Yon Dunlap is my Twitter, as well as on Instagram. And I'm like Chris just said, man, I'm happy that we're doing this. I mean, it's a good, it's something that isn't being done. And more importantly, we know what we're talking about. That's another thing to have people on doing it and not know what they're talking about. So that's even more thing to be having a conversation with people who is even more knowledgeable than me about Houston. Yeah. So I'm glad to be a part of it with you guys.
Akib, you go ahead. You're next.
Yeah, you could just see it on the screen at AQIBM GAZI on Instagram or Twitter. I'm always trying to post stuff about UH basketball if I'm not posting about other, sports. So
Chris, go ahead.
And I'm the old head of the group. See me on my Twitter is VHR Review and Houston Roundball Review on YouTube. And I look forward to doing this again tomorrow.
For sure. And you guys can follow me on Twitter at Yanez_5. It will show up on the screen in a second. I did want to mention for the viewers that are there, we are plugging. Add any sponsored segment, live ad reads. This would be the time. Like imagine, X company presented this segment, presented the Calvin Sampson availability, live tweets. We'll do it all. We're trying to grow. The more funds that we have, the more opportunities we'd be able to have to be out there at Fertitta Center. Heck, be out there at Fort Worth in the future whenever, whenever the Big 12 tournament is come. It's an exciting time for the University of Houston athletics program. And like you said, we'll can't wait to do it again tomorrow.
Thanks a lot, guys. Y'all take care.
Bye, y'all.
All right.